Joining me now, Juanita Tolliver, Democratic strategist, and Dr. Ebony Hilton, associate professor at the University of Virginia. It is great to see you both. Juanita, you heard me talking about the hypocrisy of some on Fox. Here's one more for you. Take a listen.
She said you have no right to board a plane if you're unvaccinated. It's not an American right guaranteed in the Constitution to board a plane. I believe, by the way, the 1964 Civil Rights Act was purposefully, intentionally brought through the Constitution, through the Interstate Commerce Clause. It was so that we could recognize the right of black Americans to enjoy interstate travel.
Juanita, your reaction to that comparison there?
It's laughable, Alicia, like, come on now, really? This Fox News host is going to invoke the Civil Rights Act? Like, what? I can't even wrap my head around this, because the irreparable harm that they have done to their audience, the irreparable harm that they've done to this country, with hundreds of thousands of people not only getting infected with COVID, but dying from COVID. And to find out that 90% of full-time Fox employees are vaccinated. Like, Alicia, my first reaction on hearing that was, I know you're lying. I know you're lying. This cannot be the truth, especially when you have their hosts get up there every single day and make arguments like this one. Like this one, when their audience is suffering. And the data backs it up, Alicia, because earlier this summer, the polling showed that Fox News viewers were 20 points less likely to get vaccinated than MSNBC viewers, CNN viewers, ABC viewers. And we can only imagine how that's translating into what we're seeing with the overcrowding hospitals and ICUs across the country. So Fox has really committed to driving this lie forward, all for ratings and at the cost of human lives. And it's truly inhumane. It's truly inhumane.
Dr. Hilton, of course, Juanita gets it totally right there, which is that the hypocrisy comes at a cost. I mentioned the stress on Southern ICUs. How concerned are you about what we are seeing right now in the South, Doctor?
Oh, very concerned. You know, I would call it hypocrisy if it wasn't cannibalistic. What we know is that vaccines make you 5 times less likely to be infected. It makes you 10 times less likely to be hospitalized, 11 times less likely to die. And if you're looking at per capita, the top 5 states in the nation right now for new infection rates, for new hospitalizations, for death for COVID, literally every single one of those 5 states literally was won by Trump, except for one state. When we're looking at the top 5 states per capita for hospitalizations, one state stands out that was not won by Trump, and it was actually Georgia. And we know what had to happen in order for that to happen. And so what we're seeing is if you are in a state that's led by Republicans, if you're in Mississippi or Florida, you're literally 10 times more likely to die from COVID. And it's not just adults. When we're looking at children, if you're in those Republican states, your child is 4 times more likely to be infected. If you're in those schools that have a ban, or they say we will not mandate masks or vaccines, your child is 3.4 times more likely to die. That's what the Republican Party are doing to their base. But then when you even look at their family, Governor Kemp's sister-in-law died from COVID. If you look at a Republican representative out of Maine, Joe Henson, his wife died from COVID, and the next week he was at an anti-vax rally. If they're willing to sacrifice their own, what do you think they'll do to you?
Yeah, I mean, Juanita, that perhaps answers the next question, which is that you have polling showing 60% of voters support Biden's vaccine mandate. They are following the science. Does this then become a losing battle for Republicans? And to the point that Dr. Hilton was making, do they care?
Absolutely a losing battle for Republicans. And not only does that poll show it, but we saw it in the referendum yesterday in California with the failing recall effort, where we know Larry Elder made vaccine mandates a central part of his campaign. It failed. They do not care. As Dr. Hilton just mentioned, they're willing to sacrifice their own. And we know that also applies to their broader base of voters. So it's not only friends and family they're willing to sacrifice, it's their voting base, which honestly has a cap that they've recognized under the party leadership of Trump, that they cannot expand because the rhetoric is so harmful and racist and really drives out the worst in this country. So no, they don't care, Alicia, and they're gonna pay the price as we face more and more elections. I think we have more November elections this year and then midterms next year, where Republicans running against vaccine mandates, against things that we know families are losing their loved ones over in this pandemic, they will lose.
We're going to be talking a little bit later about the California recall for those of you who have not gotten enough about that story. Dr. Hilton, today the Washington Post reported a grim COVID milestone. 1 in 500 Americans have now died of COVID-19. Those numbers, of course, at some point would have seemed unimaginable. When we talk about these vaccine mandates, how critical are they to helping turn those numbers around?
It's absolutely critical. At this point, if we're looking at literally the number of deaths we've had in 2021 versus 2020, we're outseating ourselves. And it's very interesting, actually, to see who is actually dying. Again, bringing up the point of this rhetoric leading to the death of their own base. There was a 6 to 8 times more likely chance that you were going to die from COVID-19 if you were Black versus white back in early March, April of 2020. We're now seeing that number is now cut down to being twice as likely. And I'm not saying that's a great thing, right? We should not have racial health disparities. But what we do know is not because Black people are dying less, but it's because white people are dying more. And this unnecessary death, it comes at a cost because we're not seeing the older population die at the higher rates that we were seeing. We're now seeing it's that mid-range group. We're seeing 30, 40-year-olds dying in our ICU, and they're leaving behind children. And we knew orphans were a problem earlier in the pandemic. But we're looking at 120,000 children left to now raise themselves when you have a vaccine that can keep you alive, keep you out of that ICU, keep you from needing that ventilator, and keep you at home to be able to see your children to school the next day. It's simply not worth it.
Yeah, when you read those stories, it's hard to comprehend. Juanita Tolliver, Dr. Ebony Hilton, thank you both.